All right, starting with this video, I am finishing off. I've met the basic requirements of the exercise. I've composited 5 or more images, black line art images, into one original composition where nothing is cropped off the side. It's free floating. The resolution is at least 8 inches by 10 inches. And we can see that under canvas size. So if I go to inches, I'll see it's 8 inches by 10 inches centered. And the pixel resolution, I can go under image size, is 150 pixels per inch. Even though Photopea says DPI, that is incorrect. It is pixels per inch, not dots per inch. Pixels are square, dots are circles. Dots per inch are for printers, pixels per inch are for screens. Okay. And if I look at the inches, again, it's 8 by 10. All good. Now, you'll notice that I have rulers here. And if you don't have rulers, you can go to View and you can click and unclick rulers. But rulers are going to be helpful throughout the class because what we can do with the Move tool is click on them and bring down visual guides. So visual guides don't show up in the file. They just show up while you're working on it. So I'm going to use the digital guides to point out some tangencies in my design. And tangencies are something you might look for when you're cleaning things up. They're where edges are overlapping each other. And so the only major tangencies I see is the bottom of this little mark here, kind of a star cartoony mark. I drew it in AutoDraw. And that feels like a tangency with the finger of the hand, right? It kind of creates both edges at once. And I'm okay with that ambiguity. Other tangencies, this thumb line is pretty close to the edge of the fire, but luckily that fire has a little white cutout shape because it's more of a woodblock print kind of vector. And so that helps separate that visually enough. This is getting pretty close, but there is daylight between them, so I think that that tangency is okay. I like how the cop's hat just sticks out a little bit beyond this little cloud shape so that they both have integrity on their own. Yeah. So I think I'm ready to move on. And because of that, I did an extra step at the end of the last video, and I said I was going to repeat it. So let me go ahead and erase this layer that I created and instead show you all the component parts, right? So this was my finished composite. Remember, this is just an exercise. It doesn't need to be perfect. But if I wanted to improve it as much as possible, I could zoom in, look at little things I didn't like, and clean them up. Little overlaps. Sometimes you have to know what layer they're from. Like if I want to get rid of this little mark, I can lasso around it. But then I'm not sure what layer it belongs to until I kind of click through my layers, because your selection will travel between layers, but you need to know which layer to select from. And then that layer shows me another tangency right here that I can open up. And we could really nitpick this as though it was, a professional logo design where every shape should be as clean and as polished as possible, but that's a later assignment that we do. This is just getting us used to the basics of raster compositing. And I know artists tend to be pretty detail oriented, so it can be hard not to be perfectionists on certain things. So you decide what's worth your time and your effort. But as long as you meet the requirements, you will get the full points for the exercise. It's worth 2 points. You get 1 point for doing something. You get 2 points for meeting all the requirements. And then I'm also going to be showing you today, before we turn this in about half an hour for critique, some options you can do. So if you're already finished with it and happy with how it looks as just a black floating composite, I'm going to show you ways we can replace that black with color alternatives. And I show that in the directions as well. Okay, so now I'm happy with all of my different layers, but some of them are slightly different blacks than others, right? Like the auto draw here is a little bit grayer versus the solid black of some of the other references. So I want to clean that up. There's also a lot of white left, and I want to get rid of all the white. So how can I do that? Well, I'm going to turn off my background layer, and I'm going to select, holding down Shift, every layer, so that when I go up to the layer options in Photopea, but this is the same in Photoshop, I can choose merge layers, and if I click that, it will merge all of those into one. But there's a big problem with that, because what if I saw like a tangency I wanted to fix? I don't have access to that individual layer anymore. So when I cut it away, I also lose everything else because it's been combined. So wouldn't it be nice? I'm going to go back in my history to before I merged layers. Wouldn't it be nice if we can merge all the layers into a brand new layer that floats on top and kept all of the component layers for our PSD file, so that if we decided later we wanted to keep working on it and make changes, we have all of those components, right? It's like being able to collage something and glue it down permanently, but also have all those pieces unglued underneath so that we could rearrange them and play with them still. So to do that, we turn off our background because we don't want to merge our background into it. We want to get rid of the whites. And we want to select all 5 of our references or more, then go to layer. But before we click on merge layers, we want to hold down the option key. And when we do that, option, click on merge layers, it will do exactly what I described. It will combine them all onto a new layer, but leave us with all of our component layers. And this is a trick that I learned in Photoshop, not from anybody, not from any books, not from any classes, not from any videos. I have not found it on any websites, but after I found it, I kind of didn't look anymore. But it is incredibly helpful, and it's not listed in any of the shortcuts, right? So if you hold down Option when you merge layers, it will save the things you are merging. So that's a really good trick. We'll be using it later in class. Okay, now why does it help to have everything on one layer once you're sure everything is placed the way you want? So it's all on one layer. Now I can use my magic wand very easily. Uncheck contiguous. Have a tolerance. I think the default tolerance of Photopea is 16, and that would probably work in this case, but I'm going to push it up to 32, which is the default tolerance in Photoshop. And that basically means how close to the pixel you click should the other pixels be in order to be selected. And we're saying it should be within a third close. But because we're doing black and white, that should be pretty easy. So I just click anywhere on the white, and now you'll see all the whites are selected. And then I just hit delete. Okay, next. So I'm going to unclick this and turn on the white background so you can see the selection is still there. And that's the selection of all the white that I deleted, right? Now I'm going to flip that selection. But I'm also going to add, let's see. No, I won't flip that selection yet. First, I want to deselect. So you can deselect 2 ways. You can click on your lasso and click somewhere. That will deselect. Or you can just hit Command D on a Mac or Control D on a PC, right? So now that I've deselected, now I'm going to use the magic wand again, and I'm going to select all the empty space with the same settings on my combined layer. By selecting all the empty space, looks like this. Notice how the edges of my rectangle now, the edges of my format are selected. I am going to swap it by going to select inverse. So everything that was selected before is now not selected, and everything that wasn't selected before is selected. And you see how the outside edge doesn't have that little marching ants marquee selection indicator anymore. Now I am going to say edit, fill, and this will fill all of the selection with one solid set of pixels with black at normal mode at 100%. This will get rid of all of those different issues where some of the blacks are different than other blacks. And then, because I had it turned off, I will turn it back on and I will deselect. And now you can see that we have very solid black pixels. But there's a problem with that. This is what's called a bitmap image. It's all or nothing, right? It's black or it's white pixels. But when you do that, even in a high resolution pixel image, it makes every curve look like stair steps. And it doesn't make that much of a difference when you see it at screen resolution. So if I say view pixel to pixel, which means I'm seeing the image in the pixel resolution that my screen is, and I have a high def screen. That's about 140 pixels per inch. But you see, I don't see those stair step pixels. But it's a little bit shakier than it might otherwise be. So I'm going to show you an alternate method instead of the filling with solid black. So I'm going to go back. We're going to do the to before we merged everything. Or no, not before we merged everything, but just right after we erased all the white background. You'll see that the different grays are still there. But this is my preferred method of cleaning it up. We're going to make a duplicate, an exact copy of this layer. And we're going to do that by, you can go to layer and say duplicate layer, but the shortcut I really want you to learn, we're going to use it so much, is Command J. And on a PC, that would be Control J. I can just click here, or I can hit Command J, and it will make an exact copy of that layer right in place. But then on the top version of that layer, you'll remember this, I'm going to go from normal mode and instead say multiply. And by saying multiply, what it does is it pushes all the darks forward so that all those grays are filled in. And yet the edges are smoother. The edges will be a little bit darker than they were before, but they'll be smoother than if all the pixels were just filled in with solid black. Because notice, especially if I turn on the white background, you'll see now there are still gray pixels softening our edges. That's why this is a grayscale image rather than a bitmap image, which is only black and white pixels. So now I have the cleanest possible black line art. And if I want to merge those into one layer, what do? I take both copies, the multiply and the regular. I select them both, and then I just go to layer. I don't hold down option this time, and merge layers. And now it's all there. All solid black, all smooth. So I know it's a lot. I'm throwing a lot of information at you. It's okay any way you do it on an exercise, but it's helping us understand raster images, pixel-based images, working with resolution, understanding how to make changes and how to avoid things that aren't as nice as you would like. Right. Okay, next. How can I play with this? Well, before